Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here, welcome back to the Railway and welcome back to another lovely Hornby Loco review. So if you've been watching my channel for a while, I imagine most of you will have seen the super modern, super detailed, absolutely incredible Hornby King class. And if you haven't seen it already, I have included a link in the description. They're still for sale today, and I honestly think, well, if you've seen my review, you'll know that they are probably one of the best models out there that you can possibly buy. However, I thought it would be quite interesting perhaps to show a slightly older version of the Hornby King class, and so today up for review I have this one. Now I bought this one from eBay. I think I bought it just a short time before Hornby actually announced the super detailed King class, which was later to come. At the time of buying this, I'm pretty sure this was the only Hornby King class available. As you can tell, it's King George VI, and as you can also clearly tell, this one is in BR Blue, and it's only, I think, one of two BR Blue Great Western engines, at least Great Western 460s in my collection, the other one being the Wren Castle, I believe. But yeah, despite being slightly older, it is still a lovely model in my opinion, and we'll see if you think so too. So for now, let's get this out and we'll take a look and see just what this is like. So yeah, here it is in the slightly older Hornby packaging, and I don't know about you, but when it comes to unboxing BR Blue locomotives, I just get a little bit of that excitement. Do you know what I mean? I know in real life they were a bit inconvenient, and for that a lot of people don't like them, but I really can't help it. There's just something special about BR Blue. Anyway, let me show the end of the box. There's a little bit of a sticker covering some of it, but you can make out that this is R2309. It's a BR460 King class locomotive and King George VI, as we've already mentioned. You can see here that this claims to be super detail, which I suppose it would have been for the time, and on the back of the box there is no information or anything like that. There's just a few sort of disclaimers. I think I've not even bothered to read those. Obviously on later packaging Hornby put quite a lot on the back of the boxes, but back in these days obviously they didn't. So let's get this thing out straight away then and we will take a look. Obviously when I bought this it was second hand, but it was in mint condition, and I believe I paid quite a lot for it. I think it was £80 or £90. Quite a lot cheaper of course than the latest Hornby King class, but then of course as we're going to see, this doesn't have anywhere near the level of detail. So you've got this sleeve which has the image on it of course, and there we have it, the beautiful loco, and say what you like about the detail, but just look at that, isn't it just superb? Yeah, there's just something magic about the King class no matter what model you get. Right, so there's a little bag here with some detail in it, so let's take a look, and oh, there's quite a bit inside here. So if you look, you can see we have a screw link coupling, I believe that is. I can only see one, which is strange, so obviously there isn't one for the front. You have got a coupling for the front, but it's this sort of hook and loop coupling. It's not a NEM one, it's more like the Airfix version or something like that, so perhaps this tooling comes from the Airfix days. I think it was an Airfix one, wasn't it? Or a Lima, perhaps. Anyway, you've also got Bill and Ben in there as well, which are the crew. You don't tend to get that these days with steam locos, or any locos really, sometimes diesels. But yeah, that's really nice to see, so if you wanted to paint those up and put them in the cab, you absolutely could do. But for now then, I think that's basically it on the separate detail, so we're going to start getting this thing out straight away. So the loco and tender on this version, unlike the modern version, are not connected permanently or electrically. I don't think, yet no electrical connection here, so you can just lift them out separately. And there it is in the early BR Blue. What a beautiful tender. Yeah, as we're going to see later on, it's not quite got the detail that the modern one has, but obviously we're not going to be criticising that because this model could be, well, it almost certainly is quite a lot older. But nonetheless, beautifully painted, isn't it? Always very nicely painted from Hornby. So that's the tender. Let's grab the locomotive out then. Here it is, King George VI, and yeah, what a smart paint job, and of course it's very, very clearly a King with this very unusual front bogie, with the leading wheels there have the axle boxes on the outside, which is not very common, I don't think, on a bogie, on a steam loco, especially given that the back one has an internal bearing. So very, very strange design. I'm not absolutely sure why it was. There must have been a reason, but I don't believe any other popular 460s from the Great Western had that. Right, anyway. Tender together, they just clip in like that, and there it is. Isn't it just impressive? It's not impressive in terms of detail, but sometimes regardless of the detail, a loco just pulls off that look, and I think this one really does. So here's a little bit of history on the King class, and after that I will show you this gorgeous loco up close and personal. Introduced to the Great Western in 1927, the Kings were designed by Charles Collett, and they were a development of the Castle class, which itself was a development of Churchward's Star. We're going back quite a few years now. He intended them to be a super castle, and they subsequently became the largest and most powerful 460 ever to run within the UK. Most of the class survived into the BR era, where they continued to be used as express passenger locomotives until they were eventually withdrawn in 1962. Of the 31 that were produced, only 3 have been preserved, and this example in particular was built in 1930, and it became severely damaged in a 1940 accident where the crew misread some of the signals. It did survive though. It was rebuilt and repaired and continued to run for several years. Eventually though, she was cut up in 1962 after 34 years of service, and so very clearly this was unfortunately not one of the preserved examples. So there she is then, King George VI up against the white background, and yes, overall I think this thing is absolutely fantastic. I'm not going to lie and say that it's as good as the latest Hornby release, which of course it can't be because they wouldn't have done it if this one was fantastic. However, if you don't have them side by side, just looking at this one in isolation, I would say actually it really does look pretty good to me. Now, as is the case with most Hornby locos of this era, and indeed the latest Hornby Great Western 460s, most of the bodywork is made of plastic. There are 1 or 2 metal elements, but for the most part they are made of plastic. However, the locomotive isn't too lightweight. There's quite a lot of weight to this, and I would guess the reason is that it's got a very big, chunky, die-cast metal chassis, which also has quite a bit of detail on it. If you just look underneath the smoke box here, this is actually part of the chassis now. There's quite a lot of moulded on detail there, which is quite nice to see. Another very, very clearly die-cast piece is, of course, the front bogie with this strange outside axle boxes business going on with the leading wheel there. Again, quite nice to see that made of metal. It really does bring out the realism. Apart from that though, as I say, most of it is made of plastic. You do have the whistles though, which are made of metal, and that's always very nice to see. And you can't always tell with the top of the chimney, but I would say this one is probably made of metal. It definitely doesn't look too plasticky to me, which is a definite big thumbs up. The paintwork is also something to really praise on this model. If we look up close, despite the age of this, not exactly sure of the age, but it's got to be, 10 years I would guess. Despite all of that, the lining is very neatly done. I really can't fault that, to be honest with you, and it's better than some modern locos that you see today. And there's plenty of lining really. If you look at the splashes, they have the lovely Great Western gold lining on there, which I think is fantastic. You've got the King George VI nameplate, which I believe is just plastic. I believe on some of the Hornby locos that they churn out today, I reckon those are actually etched and pre-fitted, but I reckon this one is just plastic. Nonetheless, it looks pretty good. And then on the side of the cab, of course, you've got the running number there, which is very nicely applied, and similarly you've got all of that lining going on around the area. So yeah, it looks great. And also the steam chest has got a fair bit of lining on there too, which is quite nice to see. In terms of separately fitted work, there's quite a bit going on here, not as much once again as the new version, but there's quite a few impressive features for the age. You do have a separately fitted reversing rod. It's very hard to tell whether that is just plastic, blue plastic, or metal that's been painted blue. I'm going to guess that it's plastic, but if anybody knows better, if anyone's got one in a different livery that is clearly metal, do let me know. But nonetheless, it looks relatively realistic, doesn't it? Just in front of the cab, you've got plenty of pipe work going on here, which I believe must be separately fitted because it protrudes so far from the bodywork, so that isn't much of a complaint. You've also got properly glazed windows with beautiful gold lining around them. It's not always a given with older locos, so it's definitely a big thumbs up that this one does have that feature. And also, similarly quite impressive is the smoke box. As you can see, we do have the separately fitted board with the number written on it there, which is nice, and also what appears to be a very finely separately fitted dart on the smoke box. Most of the time locos from this era just had that moulded on, but this one is separately fitted, so that is really quite good to see. Now if you look a little bit further down, obviously this was a 4-cylinder locomotive. You can see where the other 2 cylinders would go there. They do look a little bit strange. They don't seem to protrude out as far as they ought to, or at least judging by the modern version, so perhaps that's a small criticism, but it's not, it's nothing too major. And also the buffer beams are quite nicely done. There's quite a lot of riveting going on there, and this model does have sprung buffers, which again is quite a nice modern feature. Now there are a few drawbacks with this model, as you know there must be. First of all, the running board is noticeably very bare. There's not much riveting going on there at all, and again that contrasts quite starkly with the more modern Hornby version, which is peppered with rivets all over there. But again, it doesn't spoil it too much, although if you are one for realism, that might be something that bugs you. I'm not too sure. And also just underneath the boiler with the modern Hornby version, you do have a representation of the internal valve gear going on. With this one, unfortunately, the chassis block just takes up most of that space, so there's not really very much you can do with that. Finally then, on the small downsides, you can see that there is cab detail inside there, but there is no paintwork inside. So again, that is a bit of a drawback. Modern locos do generally have painted cabs, this one doesn't. Although again, I suppose it might make for quite a nice project if that's something you wanted to do. Let's take a look at the tender then. As you can see, just like the loco was, the paintwork is done very, very well. I can't really fault that. If we take a nice close look at the early British Railways crest there, you can see that it is very nicely applied. And unlike the locomotive, the tender does feature an awful lot of highly detailed riveting, so that is always nice to see. And on the underframe, you can see quite a lot of moulded detail. We do have the brake rigging pre-fitted. I don't know whether this version has a scoop or not. I think I can see a water scoop under there, so again, that's quite nice. A big drawback for the tender is the coal load. Firstly, I don't believe it's removable, and secondly, it's very, very chunky. Definitely not very realistic coal there, so I suppose once again, if you were really going for the realism, you would want to cut that out and replace it. It's easier to do on this one because, as I say, there's no connection between the loco and tender electrically, so there's no decoder socket or anything inside there to worry about. It really is just a dummy tender as far as that goes. And around the back, there's plenty of detail going on. As you can see, we've got more separately fitted handrails there, more sprung buffers, and what appears to be a NEM coupling, but I don't believe it is. I think it is the, like I say, the Airfix slash Lima slash Dapol coupling. I'm not absolutely sure what it is, but it's from that ilk at least. So anyway, hopefully that is a basic overview of this model. It's definitely not too bad, is it? And if you can get it fairly cheap, which I think I did, I think £80 to £90 isn't too bad for this. You certainly wouldn't want to go too much further, but again, if it's the modern version, you would pay an awful lot more. So overall, not too bad. Not absolutely fantastic, but certainly not bad. So let's get this down onto the track then, and we'll talk a little bit about the performance. So there she is then, down onto the track, looking absolutely beautiful, and once again, despite the age of the model, she really, really does look the part, doesn't she? Just absolutely beautiful. Anyway, I'm really going to put her pulling power to the test today, so I've got my entire rake of Great Western coaches, 7 of them in total, if you can just get around there. Yep, there is quite a lot of those, so that ought to be a good test of her abilities. Now, performance-wise then, the loco is just relying on loco pickups, just on the driving wheels here, 3 per line, which is a little bit of a shame. I generally do prefer them to have tender pickups, but sadly that's not the case with this one. Although once again, I guess if you wanted a project, it would be reasonably simple to add tender pickups, but you know, that's not something I've wanted to do. Also, there's a slight design issue. I wouldn't say it's a design fault, but it's something that I don't really like, is with the motor. Now, the worm drive is actually on the same half of the armature as the commutator and the brushes, which basically means it's very easy for oil from that worm to get through into the motor and cause damage, as is what happened with this one. However, about a year ago, I was able to strip the motor down and completely sort it out and clean it up, and it is now running absolutely perfectly. So with that, I've got the dead zone of the express point just there where my finger is, so we're going to try and get her over there nice and slowly and see whether the lack of tender pickups causes any problems. So here we go then with the King class, and if I can get it nice and slow, you can see that the slow speed is absolutely astonishing. Is she still moving there? Yeah, she is just about moving there, so yeah, it really, really is good. I'm not going to make her go that slowly over the express points, I'm not that nasty. We'll try it at that speed, shall we? That's still pretty slow. So yeah, despite the age, still a fantastic runner. Really, really good. Let's see. So the first wheel's over the dead zone, the centre wheel's over it now, and the back wheel's just going over. So that just proves that if you do keep the wheels clean, you should be able to negate the express points without any problems. So there we go. As you can tell, really, really good smooth runner. Oh, it has stopped now, though. That's made me eat my words a bit. Let's give it a nudge, see if that fixes it. Yeah, there we go. That was strange. It got over the express points and then stopped on the straight track. Anyway, let's couple her up to the coaches and see how she gets on hauling them. Right, nice and steadily does it then. There we are, right. Well, that sounded like a successful coupling. There's only one true way to find out. So let's set her forwards and let's get her going. So, wow. Did you see that? Absolutely no wheel slip. And that's 7 coaches, and 7 old coaches at that. Right, well, the real test will be Gordon's Hill, but based on that, I imagine there won't be too much trouble. So let me show you what else is going to be running then. On the middle line, I have a real good one that I haven't gotten running for a long time. And it's my little mock-up of the Hogwarts Express, struggling on the express points there. Here she is. Actually a castle class, but it should be a hall with some sort of, I guess, Mark 1s in an LMS livery. And then finally on the inside lines, a slightly more modern loco. This is the Grange class, also by Hornby. and she's got a little bit of a goods train. So enjoy the running session. There are 6 other locomotives on the line. See if you can spot them all and let me know in the comments. And today there is an odd one out, but it's quite tricky to spot. You really will need to know your models if you're going to spot it, but have a go if you want. Anyway, let's see how that king gets on up Gordon's Hill, shall we? I'll be very, very interested to see. So here she comes then with her mighty 7-coach consist. And to be honest, I don't know how she's doing it so well. Look at that, no wheel slip. Because she's not that heavy, the track's due for a clean, and yet she's so powerful. Just how is that? It must be something to do with the material used for the wheels. It blows the mind. Hogwarts Express, very nice to see that for a change. I picked that because it's from the same sort of era, I reckon. Lovely Grange, always a great run of that one. Looks quite nice with a mixed goods train too. And right now I can't really think of many other express engines that would beat the look of this. And just look at that. Absolutely fantastic. So performance wise it's very, very strong, isn't it? And I mean strong as in positive. And it's just very, very good at slow speed and very powerful. And this Hogwarts engine is extremely powerful as well, I mean unbelievably so. I'll have to do a pulling power test with her. Let me know actually, I'll put up a poll. Would you like me to show you how many coaches that Hogwarts engine can haul? It's very impressive. Lovely Grange, looks great with the weathering, doesn't she? So here are my ratings then for the lovely Hornby King class. Detail, I have to be honest there and give it a 3 out of 5. No painted cab detail, there's clearly quite a bit of riveting missing, and it's just missing 1 or 2 modern features. However, if you're just looking to have a little bit of fun with an engine, it's really not too bad. Power though, 5 out of 5. As you can see, she's hauling these 7 coaches with absolutely no wheel slip. I do actually wonder how many more she could manage, but it is quite impressive nonetheless, so 5 out of 5. And similarly, the slow speed was absolutely incredible, especially after all the motor trouble she's had. However, she's absolutely fine now and she's performing as well as she possibly can be, so 5 out of 5 there. Quality 4 out of 5. Generally the build quality is very, very good, although I always think an engine will be much, much better with those tender pickups, and sadly this doesn't have that, which is a little bit of a shame. Value though, for £80 or £90, it's an awful lot cheaper than the modern Hornby King class, which admittedly is better, but if you're not looking to spend all of that money, if you can find this version second hand, it's really not too bad. And who says you have to pay £80? You might get lucky and find one for less. Overall then, that is 8.02 out of 10, not a bad score at all. Into the ranking it goes, 19th there, just above the Bachmann Mavis and below the Hornby Class 73. Alright then folks, well as always I do hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. There's nothing like just spending a few hours with a beautiful loco and talking all about it, so I hope you enjoyed that as well. Anyway folks, thank you very much for your company, I do appreciate it very much. Don't forget to let me know in the comments what you thought about this model, and if there's anything else you'd like me to try and get and review, do let me know because I am happy to take requests. For now though, once again thank you for your company and I will see you all very, very soon. Cheers everybody.